Now, Winnie Mandela Mandela, the South African icon who fought tirelessly, visibly, and at great personal cost to bring racial equality to South Africa, is being celebrated in death with vows that her struggle will continue. Wednesday's somber memorial in Johannesburg is the culmination of at least a dozen memorials held across the nation since she died on April the 2nd. Madikizela Mandela, a lifelong activist who served in Parliament for nearly 2 decades, was the second wife of Nelson Mandela, the man seen as the leader of the apartheid struggle and who later went on to become South Africa's first black president. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was set to deliver the eulogy at her state funeral on Saturday, vowed to continue her legacy during a memorial in a rural hometown. Now, the death of Madikizela Mandela revived memories of South Africa's long struggle to end apartheid and achieve equality among the different races in the Rainbow Nation. Tributes from top South Africans at her memorial service Wednesday have shown her to be a complicated and controversial figure, but one whose struggle, they say, remains important in this still divided nation. For more insight on Winnie Mandela, VOA's Anita Powell joins me live via Skype from Johannesburg. Now, Anita, welcome. And first, she remains controversial even in her death. What really makes Winnie that controversial?
There are more than a few things that make Winnie Mandela a controversial figure, but perhaps the one that stands out most is the 1989 death of a 14-year-old activist named Stompie Moeketsi. She is accused, and many South Africans believe that she was responsible for his violent death. And she was actually convicted of kidnapping and causing bodily harm, but not of his murder. But that's a very ugly period in South African history, and she's widely blamed by quite a few South Africans for being responsible for his death.
Now, today's event was obviously very big, very important to the people, especially of Soweto. But what next after today?
So we're going now into 3 days of mourning ahead of her official state funeral, which is going to be Saturday in Pretoria, and it's going to be with full state and military honors. And the president will deliver her eulogy, and then she'll be laid to rest in Johannesburg.
And Anita, we know that, perhaps just briefly we can mention, some people may assume that perhaps the controversy was just about those who supported apartheid and those who opposed apartheid. What is the reality?
The reality is the Soweto newspaper, which represents the township of Soweto, which is predominantly black, described her once in a headline as the mugger of the nation. The reality is she clashed with President Zuma, Mandela, Mbeki, and with Desmond Tutu, who she once called a cretin. So she had enemies in many different parts of the struggle. So yeah. I think that would be unfair to say that it was just pro-apartheid people who didn't support her.
Now that you've said all that, our family apparently is not very, very happy about all that is being said about Winnie Mandela. Why?
Some of her family members got up at her memorial today in Soweto and said that they just thought it was disrespectful that people were criticizing her, especially over this death of Stompie Moeketsi, I believe, because, as I said, she was never convicted of murder. Her bodyguard was convicted of murder. And so these old allegations, these old prejudices, they say, are tarnishing her legacy. And they said that South Africans who say these things are acting like ungrateful children, and they chastised them for doing so.
And on the other side, has this also generated the conversation over what apartheid did to her, how this might have actually transformed her to the woman she became too?
Well, let me just tell you about one particularly harrowing episode in the life of Winnie Mandela. She was kept in solitary confinement for 18 months. And critically, during that time, she asked repeatedly for information on her 2 daughters about their well-being, and she was denied any information whatsoever. So I just want you to imagine that, solitary confinement for 18 months in a condemned cell, I should add, completely naked. And she was tortured psychologically, so she says. She was interrogated over and over again. What effect would that have on anybody? It's mind-blowing.
Now, as much as you can try to remember or kind of as you look around the landscape, is there any woman in South Africa who stands at the level of Winnie Mandela from throughout the time of this struggle until today?
Well, there are several. There are more than a few. And I think South Africa right now is realizing that we need to remember the women icons. They would include Albertina Sisulu. They would include Adelaide Tambo. These were the wives of Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu, but they played a huge role in the struggle. These include women like Madikizela, and also Sophie de Bruyn, who were participants in the women's marches of 1956. So, yes, no, there are many women who participated in the struggle, and women have always played a huge role in the South African struggle, and I think a lot of South Africans recognize that.
Anita, thank you very much for your reporting and putting things in perspective. That's VOA's Anita Powell reporting live via Skype from Johannesburg.